All right. Hello and welcome to our marketing shifts in 2026. And welcome to LinkedIn Live, which might be live, it might not be live. It looks like we're still connecting, so we'll see what happens. Anyway, for those of you who are joining and watching, or who may watch this as a recorded version later, I would love to welcome these fantastic people who are joining me, who are contributors to this piece that I ended up publishing earlier this month. And basically, it was a conversation about, all right, there's too much going on. What's working, what's not working, and hearing from some people who are actually. Sorry, I'm dealing with. They're gonna move. Okay, it looks like it is mirroring live somewhere else. So I'm gonna keep chatting. Um, Anyway, let's go around the room quickly. And first of all, thank you all for being a part of it. In no certain order, Jill Anderson of Jill and Design is joining us from Atlanta. We were just checking earlier. Jill, we've known each other from website builds nearly 15 years ago. So welcome from Atlanta. Also joining us, Kate Manful. Kate is the founder and owner of the Fierce Creative Agency in St. Louis. Welcome, Kate.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited for this today.
Terry Trespicio, who is the founder of the Creative Rules Studio, is here from New York.
Hello.
Kim Barron is Green Leaf Design. New Leaf.
Nope.
Oh, New Leaf Design. This is why Nancy should have notes. New Leaf Design in here in Connecticut is a brand agency. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you. Hi.
And last but not least, Jen T. Grace is the founder of Publisher Purpose. She is a publishing company and helps authors take their books from ideas to published books. Welcome, Jen.
Hello. Thank you.
So as I was fumbling through the beginning of this, like I said, at the end of last year, as we had AI crashing in on our heads, we had a year of kind of everybody feeling overwhelmed. A lot of us have layover in terms of the people and the clients we work with. And I just was curious and also maybe even lazy to say, all right, I know what I think is working for my clients, but I'm curious looking at this next year, especially with how AI is reaching in, to hear what everybody else is thinking, seeing, or going to be trying for next year. So all of you here contributed to that, which is fantastic. I ended up paying from another like 20 people. But what kind of came back in these responses was that, it was less of a trends piece in terms of, Nancy, here's tactic number 1, 2, or 3. It was much more of a figuring it out, but everybody really wanted to sort of reinforce that how important it was that we need to be staying human, and no matter what element we do that. And so that near and dear to my heart. But some other sort of things evolved in terms of how we're going to do that. But I'd love to hear just sort of overviews from each of you, if you don't mind me going around the room, so to speak, in terms of what it means to be human in this day and age, in terms of either marketing, communicating, being visible. And some of us are doing that for ourselves, but also how you're doing it for your clients. So I'm going to go in reverse order and say, Jen, would love to sort of hear what that looks like for you in the publishing world.
Yeah, one of the things that I've often said to authors is however you show up is how you need to show up. And so if you are standing on a stage and you are super charismatic, you're dynamic, everybody loves you, you're magnetic, then your book and your written word need to reflect that same level of magnetism. If you are more reserved, quieter, softer spoken perhaps on a stage, your book also, or your written word also has to reflect that. So I think if we're looking at that in the context of voice and humanity and AI and all of the other things, I think it's going to become even more important because people were already looking for that. They were looking for like, oh, hey, I met Terry on this call, or I saw her live. And then when you have an interaction with her, you want to know that, oh, yeah, that's the same person. And so I think that AI is going to make this even more important.
And in Terry, that's the case. Trust me. When you meet Terry, you'll have the same experience.
Okay.
Thanks, Jen. Kim, you and I actually worked on a branding exercise as AI was sort of coming into the world, and and you've moved from being a designer into this space of truly understanding brand. What does that look like for you over the past year in terms of how things are evolved or how you're moving forward with your clients this year?
I think just it sounds so trite again, but the word authenticity for me, it's really about drilling down into who a person is or their brand is. I find maybe it's an age thing, but the older I get, the less tolerance I have for inauthenticity or small talk or to the point where I almost can't have a conversation with somebody when it's at that sort of very surfacey level. So I'm trying my best to bring that into my own work and the work that I'm doing for my clients to really help them begin to understand where their strengths are, how that's reflected in their business, and then how that's reflected in their branding.
Nice. Quick welcome to hello, Phyllis from Sound Advice Strategies. We're going around the room, and Phyllis has a podcasting production company, so a nice balance to fit in. Let me see, Kate. Kate, how are things changing for you? You're really also in the techie space in terms of SEO and ads and everything else. What does that look like for you? I mean, I know in your what you're sharing in your social media, and you are a very animated human person. How is that translating in how you're doing your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me personally, showing up as like fierce creative, it's one of our values is be human first. That was well before AI was a part of the conversation. So that's how we work with our clients as well. But that does mean like when I show up on video, when I show up in conversation, you're getting the same person. So I think the challenge right now is working with our clients on that video side specifically, to show up authentically. Because it's tricky for them to do that. It's tricky to get the CEO or your leadership into that space and actually show up on the brand's behalf. I think that's the tricky part. So they prefer to have it scripted. They prefer to have, a little bit more structure around it, which can work as well. But you've got to build that trust and have kind of that balance more so now than I think before with AI involved. Yeah.
I want to get back to video in a little bit, Kate, because I think that's a big one for a lot of people, and how to do that in a way that is authentic. Terry, you lead people in writing and helping them really truly find their voice.
Yes.
What does it look like for you when you're talking to people and you're trying to pull it out of them or help them figure out how to get it, to sort of get that voice out?
That's exactly what my job has been for years. And again, I run a studio, something called the Studio. It's a writing membership program because we need a place and an occasion to write or we'll never get it done. My stance has changed. My belief in writing has not changed. You still need to write. The fact is, here's the analog that I'm thinking of. Here's an analogy that I think could work. Before cars, we use horses. Before horses, we basically walked. It didn't mean you didn't have anywhere to go. But when horses, they say, helped settle the world, like civilization, because it changed how far we could go, how fast. And it changed our relationship to time and distance. Because if you're relying on your feet, the world looks a lot different than if you're going by horse and on with car. Horses were not a trend. Cars were not a trend. So we find ourselves stepping onto something that is powerful and will change our relationship now to information, to advice, even to meaning. But it doesn't mean we don't have places to go or that the world doesn't need us to get there. I really, really believe that even to make use of AI, you have to mine the original source material. That's us. Our highest value is that we are an analog being. And as trust erodes in a world of like slop, the fact that we are consistent as humans and mine our own material for something valuable, that's not going to change. It's not. AI can do a lot of things faster than you ever could dream of, but it does not know how you grew up. It doesn't know what books you read, doesn't know what your mother was like unless you tell it. So those things create the fingerprint of our contribution to the world. That doesn't change. It just means we can go faster.
I love that. And it's refreshing also to hear, because I'm still finding, and Jen will be curious to hear later, is there are still a lot of writers who are like, I can't. Nope, I'm not touching with a 10-foot pole. My head is in the sand.
What are you saying? They're afraid
in terms of AI. It? Like they're just are. Yeah, So I appreciate this perspective that I think some writers have yet to embrace. And diving in more in terms of how we manage that sort of our analog material, as it were. Jill, in terms of designing, designing websites or helping people get their content and their voice out into the world in a design-friendly way, when in theory we can all vibe code, I know we can't. What is that looking like for you?
AI has definitely helped me in my job, like do things faster, maybe more efficiently when it's coding or like writing an email to a client or something. But I like the idea of it, you still have to get there. And I find it also has shifted like some of the things I'll help my clients do. Maybe I wouldn't before because now I have this other way of learning and, getting them information. And I mean, the other thing I noticed too is that being human and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. Like AI is always giving me compliments and telling me how right I am, even though it might not be right at all what it's telling me. I don't know, working with clients and just having that, like, we're not perfect, we mess up, being authentic. Yeah, finding that it keeps it human.
I love that, and I'm just we'll get into it more, but I know you used to have a very you were already very organized in your processes in terms of intake and learning about your clients. I can only imagine that's having a bigger AI is having a bigger impact in terms of helping you get to the source faster. Phyllis, welcome from Sound Advice Strategies. Phyllis, is another wonderful voice in terms of helping people share their authenticity and vulnerability. Phyllis, one of the things that you said in your feedback was the day of the guru is gone. People now just want really helpful guides, and I to me that spoke to the being alongside us, helping us work together, and not feeling like I'm the person who knows everything and you're doing it wrong. What is that looking like as you're talking to your clients now, and how you're doing things as somebody who showed up for a year last year doing a mini podcast for 365 days?
Yeah. So thanks, Nancy. And thank you really for just shepherding this entire conversation. I think it's really needed, and I'm finding encouragement in hearing from so many other creative people. So one of the things I definitely agree, like, again, when I said the age of the guru is over, right? It doesn't mean, we're not all experts and there aren't people that can provide us guidance and information. But I think that word guide is key. I think, and the other thing we're telling our clients, I agree much to Terry's point, like your content, your information needs to come from you. It needs to be your intellectual property that came out of your brain, your experience, your data, like all of that kind of stuff. And if you're going to, and we're using, some AI resources in the background to help us, simplify or streamline processes. We're encouraging most of our clients, if there's some things you can streamline in that part of your process, then it gives you more time to actually be creative. It gives you more time to spend really doing some deep thinking, or, really writing or spending more time. So, we don't want the trade-off to be, I can create like inferior information faster. What we'd really like is like, I can have some other things working in the background that mean my creative time went from maybe an hour to an hour and a half or 2 hours, right? And now I can, leverage that. That's the conversation we're having with a lot of our clients and how that looks. And for some of them, it means maybe they are going to up their frequency because they want to be able to, share in a kind of a different way or a different cadence, some of those kinds of things. But, AI is here to stay. It's in the podcast world, right? There's all kinds of efficiencies that have taken place. And I think it's a good thing. It's made the medium, I think, even more and more accessible, which is great. But it's only helpful if that content is unique and coming from a live human being. Again, that whole human experience. We're never going to get away from that. I think the premium. So, what, in past years, especially in online marketing, the premium was access, right? Like access to information, access to people. And I think now the premium is actually going to be on like the realness, like the does that make sense? Like the authenticity, right? It's like, I may have access. Now I have access to all kinds of stuff. I have a little thing. I have access to Seth Godin's mind about every marketing thing I might want to know, right? Which is fantastic. But also, like, how do I translate that into something for me? And how do I make that real for myself and for my audience?
Yeah, I love that. And I feel that's a nice segue into what again evolved in these conversations and what you all shared was that one of the key things was getting clear, having clarity, being real, really getting down to that core truth. And each one of you, does that in your own way, whether it's through a book, Terry, whether it's like, no, cut through the shit. Don't write what I want you to say. Write what you really need to say. Kim, as a brand designer, and Jill, I say this to you all too, like, it's not a plug and play. It's really getting that information out of people. And so, whether it's your 2-minute sound pitch, it's your 2-minute pitch on what your book is. Terry, I know you've also helped people with their speeches, or what is it that you're really trying to say. I'm just curious. It almost seems harder now to get that clarity, or it was never easy in the first place. It's still not easy, but it actually, when you get that clarity, it makes everything else easier. Do you all have secrets either for yourself or for your clients in terms of figuring, getting to that clarity? And even if you've had a brand strategy, I can say this to you, Kim, even if you've had a whole brand strategy session and you've got your brand style guide, you're still always, I feel like, fine tuning it a little bit, but trying also at the same point not to be a million things to different people. So I'm just sort of opening the floor. Kim, I'll turn it to you first of all, because I know this is like, you've moved from just making pretty websites, making attractive websites to helping people get clear, because an amazing website wasn't serving anybody if they weren't clear on their brand.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, it's doing the best you can in the moment to drill down and figure out the clarity on who you are, not what makes you better, but what makes you different than other people in your business. And allowing for the fact that it's not written in stone. It's going to change over time. And in brand strategy, it's choosing a lane, doing the best you can to figure out the best path forward, and then getting there and saying it worked or it didn't work. Now, how am I going to readjust and change what I'm doing if it wasn't exactly what I wanted?
I appreciate that lack of permanence.
Yes. Yeah.
As I live it. Jen, I'm going to go to Kate from that, because Kate, you then sometimes actually work in products, right? Like, and somebody comes in thinking they know exactly what they are. If you're doing that, whole execution plan for someone or for an entity, how are you doing that now? And are you having conversations where somebody thinks they get it and you've got to gently remind them, oh, no, we got to take this back to basics and really get to the essence?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that go on the client side of that clarity is key, but so first I would say marketing is overwhelming to them in general. We know, as marketers, we know that, and so we feel it, but we also kind of thrive in it because it's exciting to us, and it's, that's why we are in this business. But I think for the client side, they get really nervous about that, and it's just overwhelming to understand what to do next. So that's kind of consuming for them. And then the clarity of who they are within that is super messed up a lot of times, because they have either been around for a long time and they're like, this is who we are. This is who we thought we were. This is who we think we are. And there's just a lot of voices in the room, and finding that clarity is overwhelming to them too, because they do think that they know, and they should feel confident in who they are. But as we start to dig in, we kind of find out that maybe we need a little structure. We might need to go back, like you're saying, just kind of square one and say, I can't sell your product until we gain clarity on who we're talking to, who you are, how you want to show up. And I think that's you kind of do those basic pieces first.
I love the lots of voices in the room. Sometimes it can just be one person and there's still a lot of voices in the room. Who haven't we heard from? Jen, it made me think of you in terms of a book is a different beast. I mean, one, there's the process of getting the clarity in what the book is about, as well as that next step of then how does one talk about that their book and their masterpiece and their baby. Has that changed, or have how you tried to help them get clear on that changed?
I feel like it's still relatively the same because the core of it is purpose. Like my company's called Publish Your Purpose. I've got a book called that. I got a book called Promote Your Purpose. Like it's all about purpose. And I think if we can marry purpose with goals, everything else kind of takes shape on what a tactic might look like. So, if I'm an author and I'm launching my book and I have this really big goal of, selling 100,000 books in 30 days, that strategy is going to look really different than if my goal is to get booked on 15 different podcasts. So our purpose still might be the same, but how we get there is going to really be dependent on goals. And I think when we're thinking about AI and how AI is involved, I think AI is just helping us get to the goal faster potentially, but it doesn't replace the need for people like us, self-servingly, for all of us on this call. Like, people need folks to be the shepherds, to be the guides, to say, yes, use this AI tool and use it in this way because it will help you get there faster, or do not do this at all because of X, Y, and Z reasons. So there's still like that human element and just like brain power that I think AI just doesn't have. It's just so like regurgitating information that you're putting in. And like, I think it was Jill who was saying like, it just kind of like is you're so amazing. But the reality is like, we need someone to critically think, and AI does not have critical thinking skills.
I love it. Sorry, whoever I heard for Terry.
Yes.
In terms of clarity,
I have an opinion. Are you ready for it? You don't need to
Yes,
frame
I
it. I know
am.
exactly what I'm going to say. I've had a moment to think about it. I think what's hard when we try to be clear is that we mistake clarity for knowing everything and knowing everything about what we will do and be. No one knows everything. You as a person evolve, so your business and your vision will evolve. Clarity does not mean all knowing, and clarity does not mean unchanging. If you're not willing to engage in that process of evolving and being honest and aligned along the way, then you'll wonder why you don't feel clear. The reason, I'm going to go on a limb here, you feel free to disagree with me. I believe the reason we get stopped up, can't talk, can't communicate what we want to say, can't write it, can't speak it, is not because we don't know who we are. We are afraid to maybe commit to a thing, but also we have competing desires. It is hard to talk about how much you care about a cause when you also sell something that is related to what could address it. If I know I want to say something and I believe this is going to help you, but I know I'm making money on whether you believe me, now that's when we go, that's when people say sales feels icky because it is self-serving. And if I'm telling the truth, am I? If I were selling something else, would I be as adamant? That's just the nature of capitalism, everybody. We're not going to be able to get rid of that. But if we acknowledge that it's the competing desire to help and to earn, that when those things compete, then you go to trying to manage someone's feelings about you. And now you're trying to do three things. And now you're unclear because I don't know what those people will think of me if I do that. And now I can't say what I thought I meant. So until we can do that, and I'm going to say it, do the work, do the shadow work, figure out what is frightening you about selling. It's not because you're not good at what you do. We all love what we do. We're lucky to love what we do. We're lucky to do it. But until we get real honest about what we really care about, you will remain unclear.
And Terry, sorry, I'm going to do the plug for you that has evolved into now that we have more time, with AI, we have more time to show up and actually do the writing. And you say do the work, but I think I have come around to be like, when I first learned about your studio of like, I'm not a writer, why would I go to Terry's studio, to, oh my God, it's like going to practice. It's like showing up and going to practice. And the clarity that comes is because you're starting to actually write and get stuff out of your head versus me showing up to Kim and saying, Kim, what's my brand?
Oh, of course. I'll pay someone else to
Which
worry
is what
about
I
it.
did, right? Like, Kim, what's my brand?
That's okay. That's great. That's why we have people
Exactly.
like these guys.
Exactly.
But it requires bravery. And if you aren't willing to do that, no one else can be clear for you.
Yeah. Phyllis, how's that playing out in the podcasting world?
So, well, Terry's spot on. So we talk a lot with our clients about putting in the reps, right? Like you're not going to get really good at, just the technical parts of recording, right? Some people are already really effective speakers. They're really engaging people and personalities, and that comes easily to them. but still recording yourself and that kind of thing can be a little different. You have to put the reps in, but you also mentally have to put the reps in for like saying what you want to say and being willing to take a stand. Our most successful podcasters are opinionated and they take a stand and they have a place that they, stuff that they believe in and that sort of thing. And not from a controversial standpoint, just from a place of service, right? Like, here's what I believe. And, I want to connect with other people who believe what I believe and who want to do what I'm here to do. The other thing I'll throw out here too, for people, I know we have a lot of people here that are involved in writing and books and publishing. I think it's never also been more important, even though we're giving away a lot of content in the podcast world, especially for free and in other mediums too. I think it's really important that you have a place where your content is on a platform that you own and you can control. I think that's also something that, AI, it's getting really muddled with AI, right? Because it's scraping data and information from all kinds of places and then regurgitating it back. And some of that's okay. But I think your own creative work, I believe you just need to have a place where that can live and it belongs to you and you can control it. You can take it down, you can share it widely if you want to share it widely, you can gate it. I just think moving forward, I think we're going to look back at some point and be like, I can't believe I put all my information on this social media platform and then, I no longer controlled it or owned it. So we're talking a lot about that with our clients as well.
And that's a great segue, Jill, to, websites still being relevant and important. Also in the day of AI when, people aren't necessarily even getting to websites if they can use AI. How, in terms of basically sort of being the home base for your clients as well as helping them get clear, are you doing that or has it changed? I love that there's a lot of evolving here. So in the olden days when you and I worked together, we would set it and forget it. That doesn't happen anymore, right?
No, I mean, I guess you can, but then you won't be very relevant. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big proponent of, owning your content. I do WordPress websites, so a WordPress site, then it's going to be yours. I don't think AI is going to necessarily change the need to, have your content, make the content and all of that. It's, what am I trying to say? It's getting, going back to the clarity for we've talked a lot about the clarity for who the business is, but the clarity for the user, like using, knowing who you're speaking to and then getting them to act on what you want them to do. That's
a great point because that also evolved in the, in this subject was like, all right, the clarity beyond who you are, who do you want to speak to? Because that's, and, as you mentioned, Jen, and the goals, like getting clear on all of those, again, it's going to evolve a little bit, but it's going to help you decide where you're going to go, but more importantly, also where you don't have to be and what you don't have to do if you're not in that mode of like trying to get to everybody at, if you're not trying to reach everybody in all the places, which I think we've gotten to that point of, we can't do it all. We kind of have the, go ahead, Kate.
I just want to add something real quick, Nancy. I was just thinking first of all, I didn't realize that people were still worried about or not thinking about their website. I feel like those were conversations I had early on. Like, yes, you need to hold your content on your website. Don't put everything on social, but I can't believe that's still happening. So it sounds like that is still happening. And so that is not good. But I mean, we have turned down projects because we do branding, website development, design, and then we also do organic and paid. So we kind of do this little wraparound for our clients. And if they want just social media, but their website is still garbage, I'm not taking that job. Because the social media is not going to convert the way we need it to, because the hub of your business is not up to snuff. So that's just our take on it. Like I literally wrote a proposal yesterday that I had to back off of and say, I recommend you do this. And if you're not ready for that right now, let's talk in a year or whenever, because you got to get it in order.
Well, I mean, I think I actually got into what I'm doing is because somebody was like, well, you know all these technological things, so help me. And I was like, well, you think you're coming to me for social media, but what we're really going to do is go back to the basics. And if you're not ready to go back to the basics, then it's not going to work out. Wanted to say thank you, Terry, for being here. And she had already warned me she needed to back out. So this sort of, if we had a visual, we're all really wanting to go back to human, right? As Terry called out, we've all called out, we're working now with this new thing that is, AI. It's not a trend. It's not a shift. It is a thing. Getting clear being the core of all this. What kind of evolved in people's responses in terms of either or sort of tactics or approaches, or I ended up calling them shifts, were three different things. And I want to touch base on those because we've slightly referred to them in this conversation, but I know you're working with people in this capacity. And so the first one was, as opposed to thinking about feeding the content monster and having to be everywhere at once, thinking about, being, content stewardship. And again, I think everybody in this room, if we'd said content to our clients, I don't even know, maybe, well, some of us with authors and writers, they've got a lot of content, but now content, everybody, it's a common word, but thinking about being the steward of that versus I have to keep creating. I have to wake up every morning and I've got a blank slate. But thinking about what is my content? What is my voice? What is my stuff? What is my IP? And how can I be using it more thoughtfully, strategically, efficiently? Some people have already been doing that, but I think it almost feels like a relief if we could shift into that mode versus today's a new day. What am I going to say? I've had conversations with clients where they're like, I feel like I keep saying the same thing. And I was like, you are, but people need to hear it. And, that message needs to resonate. And also, if you've got a book, I'm looking at you, Jen, if you've got a book, you've got to just keep talking around your ideas and your messages over and over again. And so, I just would love to touch upon it, what that looks like for each of you and your capacities, or either how you're doing it with clients or you're doing it yourself. I'm going to sort of focus. Phyllis, I think you're a natural for content stewardship in the podcasting world. So it might be easy for you, but for some, like, just walk through where we take a big idea and shepherd it through a channel. I mean, through a life cycle, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, Nancy, you're right. I think that, again, we tell our clients, first of all, creators want to create. A lot of people that we work with, they have a message and they really want to share their message and they want to make connections and they want to create community and all of those things. And a lot of creators want to do that. And they just, we have different ways of doing it, whether it be a book or a podcast or what have you. But really, for content stewardship, I believe again, if you have a goal, like if you're trying to sell books or if you're trying to market your business, what have you, something very specific, you really do need to talk about the same thing. You just need to find 1,000 different ways to talk about that same thing. And so the challenge to creators, I think, is to find interesting ways to keep doing that, because your audience isn't bored hearing the same stuff from you. That, you might be bored as a creator talking about it again. And I'll reference the Daily Dose of Hope. It's a micro podcast. It's really short. I publish every Monday through Friday. I have talked about some of the same themes, how hope thrives in community. I've talked about that probably 20 different times. Some people may be tired of hearing it, right? But it's still relevant and it still pops back up. And I have different examples, or we'll talk about it in a different way. I'm not perfect at this by any means, but those kinds of strategies, I think are kind of, again, that difference from being a creator to being a steward, right? It's really understanding the message my audience needs to hear over and over and finding really different, unique, fun ways to do it for me as a creator, and also unique and different ways so it lands with my audience. Some people are going to hear things differently. It's going to land with different people depending on where we are in our life and all that good stuff. I think that's the big sort of stewardship, I think, piece for me and for our audience.
Yeah, I like that because I think people are like, and I've had clients, it's like, well, I have to do my podcast and then I have to do my blog and then I have to do my social media. I was like, whoa. No, not at all. So anybody else? Kate, I know you've already talked about the omni channels that you help people be present across, but there are ways to do it so you're not, in every single place, every single time doing something new.
Yeah. I would say there's a couple of things like that have been recently very helpful to us in kind of doing this brand storytelling that's wider than just tell it once and it's done. And I think the SEO part of it from the website standpoint, just being able to look at and using AI to do this, a lot of that research around what people are actually searching for around your topic can take that big theme and help you to bust that thing down into a whole bunch of mini themes. And that I think that's been really useful for us to kind of guide not only the content on their website, but obviously if they're doing podcast work or if they're doing videos, that kind of thing. And I think it's more on the technical side of just like expanding the story, but we do a lot of event coverage and the same kind of thing is true. Like we'll go there on site and we are not just shooting photos and grabbing a couple videos. We are planning for the next 6 to 8, sometimes 12 months, using that because we want to pull out these themes. And so we have a very specific list of topics we want to cover, and we're going to get it over that 3 days that we're on site with all of these people that are there. So I think there's just ways to think of that, again, the stewardship of the content a little bit differently with that in mind.
100%. Kim or Jill or Jen, I'm just curious, like what that's looking like for you in the stewardship space, or thinking about it differently. Kim,
I'm actually in the opposite. I'm looking at it in the opposite way, only for myself, because this is a big year of change for me personally. A lot is going to be happening. A lot of my focus has got to be in a lot of different places besides work, just for this coming year. And I was kind of mentally beating myself up about how I started a blog last year, but I had to take a break from it. And now in my head is just like those 2 a.m. in the morning, like writing my to-do list and how am I going to fit all this in and then posting and da-da-da. And I just finally the other day gave myself permission to just stop, like take a breath, take a step back, allow myself to have this year of not being generating a lot of stuff. There's a feeling that whole like flood the zone thing that's going on is feeling like, I just feel it a lot. I feel a lot of anxiety from that and like, hurry up. And I heard somebody say recently that I think this is an old school thought and I'm not, Kate could probably speak better to this, but somebody said recently in a meeting I was in, if you're not posting 3 times a day, your stuff is just not, it's not going to get out. And I was just like, holy shit, really? That was, I don't think it's true. I think that might've been the case a while back and thought has changed. But so just speaking for myself, it's, I think, okay sometimes to say, I need to break and maybe rethink where I want to come back in a little bit and what tactic I want to take at that time. I also personally like the idea of showing up not as perfect, showing up and saying, here's where I screwed up. Here's where I learned a lesson. Here might be a different way to look at things and just not always having to be somebody who knows it all and has it all their shit together, because I certainly don't.
That goes back to the vulnerability, the authenticity, the being the guide, not the expert or the guru. Jen, in terms of books, because that's a big chunk of content when you write that book.
It is. And if I go back to what I was saying before about goals, I think it's all about where our alignment is and where we can put our intentional energy. Because when you have a book, you have endless content. But if you, Nancy, say to me, Jen, in order for your book to be successful, I need to see your face on all of the local media. I need to see you on video, on camera, doing this, and posting 3 times a day. And I hate social media and I hate being on video. I'm immediately going to fail. And so what I should look at instead, if I have a lot of content or if I don't have content, to say, okay, what do I actually enjoy doing and what are my goals? If my goal is to get more clients and I have a book, how can I come up with a strategy that is me reaching out to intentional people for specific reasons and offering them my ebook for free or offering them a chapter for free or whatever the case may be? That's going to lead me to feel more aligned, because now I'm not on stage or on a camera or writing on social where I feel miserable, because that authenticity is going to be there. Because if I'm like not happy showing up in those places, my energy is going to show it, and that's not going to be resonating with the people that we're trying to reach.
Yeah, I totally agree. And my hope in all this, Kim, especially, or at least when I was either drawing conclusions or doing the research, was I wanted people to have some relief from this, and I actually had somebody who reached out yesterday when I sent the email, and she's like, oh my God, I feel so much better. And I was like, that was the point. This is meant to sort of be like, don't like tune it out or be clear or be authentic, but like we can't, we're screaming from everywhere. The noise is everywhere. And the hope was like, step away, what's going to work for you, and everything else. I want to dive into a little bit two other concepts that evolved, and it won't surprise any of you that thinking about being visible or thinking about actually quote unquote marketing in a form of actually making real connections or building community, which you guys know is my thing. Like, I don't even like to call it marketing. I like to call it building community around your idea, expertise, or whatever. But I think, again, taking that step back and saying, where do I want to be? Jen, you just said this. Where can I have these conversations? What if we just went back to picking up the freaking phone, or sending, just those detailed news. I mean, just, sending like truly personal newsletters or emails. That's still marketing, just because it's not on a social media channel. Like, where can you be authentic and do that? And again, I'm going to go back to, it doesn't have to be about numbers. It needs to be about real connection. Yes, that's partly human. But also, I think far more meaningful and impactful. This to me is a classic way of like, let's be in community and talk about marketing versus, having to write 16 blog posts about what's going on in marketing. Kate, you mentioned events. Jill, what does that look like for you, when people are still in an online world, or how people making connections? I'm just curious.
For me and a lot of my clients, the newsletter and, sending things through email is still really, really effective. And I think it's more of like the letter part of the newsletter, like you're being real and sharing your successes, but sharing your failures. I mean, when I send a newsletter and tell something about something that upset me, other people get upset, or you talk about when you didn't do something right. Like it's like getting that feedback and being built back up on something. It's really nice. So just having that dialogue, and I guess it doesn't have to be a newsletter; it could be anything. Just that reoccurring dialogue with people. Like so.
Kate?
Nancy, I loved how in the article itself you had written how it let's focus on how it looks, change that shift from how it looks to how it lands. And I loved that phrase. It really stood out to me as like, oh my gosh, yes, that's gold right there. So thank you for that. Because I mean, even recently in a strategy, we spun up a different idea that was actually, I wasn't sure if they were going to go for it. I wanted my client to basically own the St. Louis market around their product. And I said, I want you to make sample products, and I want us to put it together in a little basket, and I want it to have all the little materials, and it's going to have the QR codes that take into the site, all the things. But I physically want you to give me the list of the 20 top clients you want, like the customers you want. And that's the strategy. And we had digital paid ads that were also going on. And so we kind of had this digital but real tangible moment. And they loved it, right? Like, it's a great way to, again, build that community around their product. They could put faces to names and all of that kind of thing. But it took some convincing, because that's time. That's a lot of time for their team to go out,
Yep.
And do that. But
that's extremely high touch, but AI can't do that. Sorry.
No.
You know what I mean? And I think the other way, Jen, you mentioned speeches. Like, the other thing that I'm going back to with clients is, where can people see, touch, hear you, and not your avatar, and, and not some, not that I presume any of your clients are creating, AI avatars that aren't really them, but going back to the human part of, if you're actually on that panel, you guys are here showing up, like, people are actually understanding how you operate in your businesses by having these conversations. And I think that's important. So, I've kind of said to people, I'm less, again, content can be you actually getting up on a stage, but there's time and energy that needs to be spent in doing that and getting you on that stage, or, and Phyllis getting you, on a podcast or on several podcasts where people can have those conversations. I want to just touch upon the third concept that came out, and we've actually already alluded to it, but for me, and Phyllis, you were an inspiration on this, and that is the what if we shifted from performance to to being present, right? Being present in the moment, being vulnerable in the moment, just being present and not waiting for things to be perfect. And so again, I say to you, Phyllis, Phyllis showed up every single day with a podcast. It was a micro podcast. It was about hope. It was like her one thing she could do last year. And so I made the commitment this year. It's like, I'm showing up every Friday on Instagram. It is not pretty. I'm still figuring out captions, but also Terry's not here for me to say this. Writing to me does not come naturally. So I was like, I can sit and chat anytime. So I think I'm going to try and walk the talk, but showing up, just showing up as opposed to waiting for it to be perfect. Or I'm going to really say, like, with AI, as much as it's a tool, I'm finding I'm spending more time with my computer, not less, and that's bumming me out personally. So I'd love to hear, Jill, you mentioned it like in your email newsletter, if you're writing it, but just sort of being yourself, showing up. Are there other ways you're seeing your clients do it, or that you all are doing it that are at least resonating or working for you?
I mean,
go ahead, Jill.
I think just, doing the thing consistently, whatever it is, it's blogging, newsletter, social media, and it not being perfect, but just, you don't just slack off and, never do it. You put the stuff out there, and it might be great that one time, or it might just be another boring thing, but at least you're doing it. And over time, that will pay off.
Yeah. And I think consistency, I'm going to just pipe in to say, I think doing it consistently is important. Consistently doesn't mean, Kim, 3 posts a day, for God's sakes.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? And you just,
yeah,
this is coming from me, who hasn't sent a monthly newsletter in 3 months, but that's all right. I'll raise my hand.
So,
go ahead. I was going to say, Phyllis, what's going on in podcasting there? Like, cause I know you don't have a prescription.
So what we don't, like, podcasting has always been like, there were no rules, right? Like, you sort of do whatever you want. There are people that have 3-hour shows, and there are people that have 3-minute shows, everywhere in between. But the one thing consistency is really important, even if that's once a month, whatever that looks like for you. It's important not just for your audience, but it's important for you as a creator, right? Or to just, to I don't know, like, it's a muscle, right? So it's like, if I know that I'm going to need to create this content, and I send an email newsletter the second Sunday of every month or what have you, like, I can be in that creative space, and I can sort of be thinking about that and, working towards that in a real consistent way. The other thing I want to tell people, that 3 times a day, like, I don't know anybody who does that. I mean, there may be somebody, but the one thing, we are never going to be able to outperform, like, in volume with AI. So let's just stop. Like, that's a game nobody's going to win. Like, nobody should even be playing it, right? So that's why I think taking a step back and going, Jen put this nicely, like, where can I move the needle with the people that I'm interested in connecting with, that are interested in what I'm doing? Like, where can those connections happen? And Nancy, you are such a great connector. I know it comes naturally for you, but I think, again, we can use different mediums to do it. But I think when that kind of energy is infused into your content, other people pick up on it, even if it's written word or if it's spoken word, or however people are consuming it. So I just want people to remember that too, like, your energy and your intention, all of that matters, which, again, is not something AI can do or emulate, right? It's not even trying. So I hope that gives some people a little bit of permission to maybe ease off a little and do what feels right for them. And also think more about your energy and, the way that you really want to land with other people.
I appreciate that. And Kate, I want to go back to earlier. You talked about video and people wanting it to be perfectly scripted, right? And how you're drawing them out in terms of getting them to show up and be present and themselves, with their energy or their voice or their realness, when it doesn't necessarily come naturally to them.
Yes, that's always a trick for sure. And I think that when we're on site, really, like, actually capturing the video for them, I can draw that. You can warm them up, right? You can spend that time. We've all done that. We're kind of doing that even with each other. Like, getting to know each other and getting people to kind of loosen up and smile and things. But really, once the record button hits, and maybe you find this too, Phyllis, on podcasts, you don't know how they're going to react, and how they're going to show up. And sometimes that really it's a deal breaker for some people. It really is. But for us, when we're looking at it, we have different ways of trying to bring the authenticity from them. Sometimes it is having them look off screen. Sometimes we have to bring another person in on screen with them to help ease that, direct to camera feeling, things like that. My funny twist is that when I'm with clients, I'm very much like, okay, this is your posting schedule. Let's hold you accountable. Let's do this. This is what we need to do. But with my own, I have to be real. I can't plan my LinkedIn posts ahead. I can't do it. I want to be in the moment, what I'm feeling, what I'm saying. I don't know if you guys are like that, but like I like to show up on camera and just be there. And if I can't get it out in 3 takes, I'll wait another day, or I'll, try it again some other time. But I try to share that with my clients too, like that, and I've shown them some silliness that I've done that maybe didn't land the way it probably should have. But I think it's really, you're going to have some people that it's going to be able to click for eventually. And other people, we have to just understand that there needs to be another method for them to share who they are, because it might not be video.
Jen, in books, this looks a little bit different, right? Like you and I tend to work with authors, and who sometimes the written word is much easier for them for a reason. But also deeper than that, a lot of people write books thinking they want the books they think that their audience wants versus the book that they actually need to write. And so I know, that's a different feeling, but I think being present versus performing for authors, goes even, can work differently. How does that look like for you when you're working with your clients?
Yeah, I think it's all about having that core strategy. And it's so much of what everyone else is kind of already talking about, where it's just really looking at our personality, where we shine, because the last thing somebody wants is someone to look and feel performative, right? So if like right now I'm like doing this whole performance and song and dance and everyone's like, that's not Jen, like that's creating like a disconnect between us and then the intended reader. So I know, without getting too into the weeds, but like when it comes to a book, like you have the editing process and you have editors and collaborators who are saying, hey, the way you're phrasing this might come off disingenuous or might come off inauthentic, and therefore you might want to do it this way instead. So my, feeling is that usually when authors, specifically authors, have gone through the whole process of having all of their words being critiqued by other people, there is a humbleness that kind of comes out on the other side. And I think it does give authors maybe a little bit of advantage to know like where that line of performativeness begins and ends, because they've already been, a little bit of it's been knocked out of them through the editing process.
Well, and I think also this is not to say AI can be an editor, but quite the opposite. We have to become our own editors when AI takes something, when AI comes back and was like, here's this, and you're like, that is totally not my voice. And we have to go back and be like, no, AI is spitting out something performative that it thinks the world wants to hear. And I'm like, no, I would never say that. Or, that is not the language I use. And if you use the phrase, why this matters one more effing time, I'm going to kill you. I'm like, stop it. Like, I would never say why this matters is ... Anyway, we're over our time. Jill, thank you so much for being here and piping in from website design. And I'm again, a shout out for the people who are still working on websites. Kim, thank you to you. I know you've had a crazy year, but we love seeing you in person and sharing your brand expertise. Jen, I'm glad people are still writing books and we're still getting people's voices out. Kate, your energy comes through on LinkedIn 100%. And Phyllis, you are the queen of content stewardship. I really appreciate you all being here. I will put ways to connect in the show notes, or if we have said show notes in a LinkedIn Live and circle back. But again, I just want to say thank you. Like, we wouldn't be sitting here if you all didn't do all the amazing work that you do. And I love, like I said, being in community and collaboration with you. And I hope the takeaway for us as our own business, as our own business owners, but also for the people listening that we work with is, it is overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be if, it doesn't have to be as overwhelming as it seems like it is. And there are amazing people like you all who are in this room and on my resource page, or that also contributed, who help pull it out of you. Like we sometimes we can't actually do our own work ourselves, but having experts like you all do it makes it a whole lot easier. So I hope we're going into 2026 with a little more authenticity, presence, community, connection, and you guys are making it a whole lot easier to do. So thank you.
Well,
Thank
thank
you,
you,
Nancy.
Nancy.
All right, she's gonna hit this. I'm gonna hit the stop button, and we're gonna see what happens. Maybe we'll still be here, maybe not. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.